9 consecutive nights of American strikes against Iran. That's not a skirmish, that's a sustained military campaign. And it's happening right next to one of the most critical choke points in the entire global economy. If you've ever wondered why financial markets pay such close attention to a narrow stretch of water between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula, this video is going to make it very clear. Here's where things stand. The United States has now carried out a 9th consecutive night of strikes against Iran. This is an escalating campaign, and according to reporting, the explicit objective is to destroy Tehran's ability to disrupt shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, American casualties are rising, meaning this conflict is no longer a distant, costless operation. It is deepening, and both sides are absorbing real consequences. That is the news. 9 nights, an escalating campaign, a stated goal of protecting one of the world's most vital shipping lanes, and a casualty count that is climbing on the American side. So why does a military campaign near the Strait of Hormuz matter so much to investors, traders, and anyone who pays an energy bill? To understand that, you need to understand what the strait actually is. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway. At its tightest point, the navigable channel is only a few miles wide, sitting between Iran to the north and Oman and the UAE to the south. It connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, and from there to the broader world. Now here's the part that makes it genuinely irreplaceable. Roughly a fifth of all the world's oil passes through that strait. Not a fifth of regional oil, a fifth of global oil supply. Every day, tankers carrying crude oil and liquefied natural gas from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, Qatar, and other producers thread through that passage on their way to markets in Asia, Europe, and beyond. There is no easy alternative. The pipelines that exist to bypass the strait have limited capacity. If you close the Strait of Hormuz, or even make it significantly more dangerous to transit, you are squeezing an enormous share of the world's energy supply through a much smaller opening. That is why this waterway appears in almost every serious geopolitical risk analysis ever written. S has stated clearly that its goal in this campaign is to prevent Iran from being able to disrupt it. Has campaign aimed to stop? Iran has developed a range of capabilities specifically designed to threaten vessels and naval forces in and around the Persian Gulf. These include anti-ship missiles, naval mines, fast attack boats operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, and shore-based missile batteries positioned along Iran's coastline overlooking the strait. The logic of Iran's posture has always been a kind of deterrence through threat, essentially saying that if Iran is attacked or its economy severely squeezed, it retains the ability to make the strait costly or dangerous to use. That threat alone, even without being fully exercised, influences global energy markets. It affects the risk calculations of shipping companies. It affects the insurance premiums that tanker operators pay. It affects the price at which oil producers can move their product to market. Now, when the United States launches a sustained military campaign, 9 consecutive nights of strikes, the stated purpose is to degrade or eliminate those capabilities. The idea is to remove the threat at its source, the missiles, the launch infrastructure, the naval assets that could be used to harass or block tanker traffic. Whether that campaign succeeds, and to what degree, is the critical variable that markets and policymakers are watching. What we know from the source is that the campaign is ongoing, that it is escalating, and that American casualties are a real factor, which adds political and strategic complexity to how long and how intensively this can be sustained. Let's talk about what this kind of sustained conflict typically does to the financial and economic landscape. And be clear, we're talking about general mechanics here, not specific claims about what any market has done in the last 9 days. First, energy prices. When there is genuine uncertainty about the security of the Strait of Hormuz, oil markets tend to build in a risk premium. Traders don't wait for a tanker to actually be sunk, they price in the probability that supply could be disrupted. The more serious and prolonged the military activity near the strait, the larger that risk premium can become. A fifth of the world's oil supply being even partially at risk is not a small input for a commodity that touches virtually every sector of the global economy. Second, shipping and insurance. War risk insurance premiums for vessels transiting conflict zones tend to rise sharply when military activity escalates. Shipping companies face higher operating costs, and those costs can ripple into the price of goods that depend on sea transport. Third, there's the broader economic knock-on. Higher energy costs are effectively a tax on every business and every household. They tend to weigh on consumer spending, compress corporate margins, and complicate the job of central banks trying to manage inflation. And fourth, and this is perhaps the most important dimension for investors right now, the rising American casualty count introduces a political variable. The longer this campaign runs, and the more costly it becomes in human terms, the more pressure builds around strategic decisions. How long to sustain strikes, what the end goal looks like, whether diplomatic channels reopen. Markets hate uncertainty. A conflict with a clear and foreseeable endpoint is easier to price than one that could escalate in unexpected directions. So how do we classify what's happening here? This is a direct military confrontation between the United States and Iran, focused specifically on protecting freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. It falls into a category that economists and risk analysts call a geopolitical supply shock, an event where the risk of disruption to physical commodity supply originates from political or military conflict rather than from economic fundamentals. These events are among the hardest for markets to price because they depend on decisions made in war rooms and diplomatic backchannels, not on supply and demand data or earnings reports. Historically, conflicts near major energy choke points have triggered sharp but sometimes short-lived spikes in energy prices. If the disruption turns out to be less severe than feared, prices can retrace quickly. But if a conflict deepens, spreads, or results in actual sustained interference with shipping, the economic consequences can be far more lasting. S is now 9 nights into this sits squarely in the uncertain middle of that range. It's serious enough to be classified as a major geopolitical risk event. It's ongoing enough that the outcome isn't yet clear. And it's directly tied to the artery through which a fifth of the world's oil flows every single day. That makes it one of the most significant economic and financial stories in the world right now, and one that every serious investor needs to be watching closely. If this breakdown was useful, subscribe to Investors Club Global. We break down the financial mechanics behind the biggest stories in the world without the noise and without the hype. Hit the like button if you want more analysis like this, and drop a comment below telling us what you think the most important variable is to watch as this situation develops. We'll see you in the next one.